It's a story of my whole life. This to me, I sit here and I meditate. And I'm saying, since I was a kid, every trophy in that thing is over 65, some 70 years old. And those are the ones plus all the plaques that we won as a coach. But this is my life. About a 6-year-old kid, every morning to wake up, across the way there was a woman called Millie McKenna. Patch on one eye, red hair, you know, just a mess. And every morning I go, "Good morning, Mrs. McKenna." And she would, you know, back, "Don't good morning me, you little Porky, So the Porky whatever became Porky, and it's been with me ever since. The reason why I was successful, basically in generally, is because I had a taste of prejudice when I was a little kid. And you know, growing up, being Portuguese, we only had about 50 Portuguese families in Bridgeport. So basically the Italians and the Irish were always up my wagon. So it kind of drove me to, I've got to be the best, I got to be the best. Believe it or not, when you were just 5 families with Portuguese, you were just treated different.
But how so? What would slangs, race?
You weren't invited to certain parties. You know, the Italians had their own clique. The Irish were brutal because they controlled the whole city. You know, back then in the 50s, you know, the mayor, and they were tough. Irish, believe you, they looked down on everybody back then. So, and the Italians were so. I was in a situation where, geez, not too many Portuguese, so I had to be really good at what I'm doing. So I worked like hell, and that was the thing that motivated me.
You have to see his sports museum to really understand just how special an athlete and gentleman this man is today. And he's heading towards his 91st birthday. I see him quite often and reflect on so many great experiences that we both shared. You know, beginning with when he was at St. Anthony's High School in Bristol. He was the assistant coach to Frank Longo, and I remember him coaching the great Mike Bogoslowski of Channel 8. I'm in your corner.
I'm Mike Bogoslowski, and I'm in your corner.
But Coach Vieira, the memory of that team and talking about that team when he was in Bristol, it was when I was, in 8th grade. So I remember those teams, but I followed his career, obviously, as a great baseball coach, but his legacy as a basketball player and just phenomenal.
I'll tell you what I enjoy doing. My plan, other than my birthday, I have a saint, I call him a saint. I have George Grant coming over, who's with the Cincinnati Reds. He's been with involved in baseball for years and years.
If you're honest and you look at the last century of sports in Connecticut, there's nobody who's had a greater impact on athletics, sports, competition, coaching, and helping young players than Frank Vieira. I mean, look at the greatest athletes in the history of Connecticut sports. I mean, go back to the Levi Jackson, the Floyd Littles, the Andy Robustellis, people like Bobby Valentine, people like Rich Diana, people like Calvin Murphy, people like Scott Burrell. They all have had remarkable careers. But what V had was a career on the court, on the field, and then one as a coach as well.
Dan Gooley from Quinnipiac coming over December 9th after, basically a party for people with baseball, and we're going to talk baseball. So I have about 10 people coming over.
You have to understand that Frank Vieira was the captain at the gate of college baseball here in New England in the Northeast in those years in the 60s and 70s, as well as the 80s. He was the guardian of college baseball in New England with John Winkin and Andy Baylock, Bill Holowati and Don Cook at Fairfield. This were a group of guys, of coaches in New England who had total respect for the game.
When your mind is still active, I just talked to some guy who was in Happy Thanksgiving. He's 99. I said, oh my God. So I think it's all in your head, no question. I got my body's shot because of all the running and wear and tear on it. You know, I got 2 broken bones in my vertebrae. But hey, the key is you got to grind it out.
Porky, I hardly ever saw a uniform, but his legend is bigger than even himself. I love everything about him, in that he is a total baseball man, is a total loyal person to everyone he's ever been with. And I did get to play racquetball against him, and I can tell you all the legend about him being the greatest competitor is true.
That's part of the game. It's easy when everything's all right. But I played with patch over one eye, 7 stitches, so I don't, and then my kids, all the kids that I coached, they were tough as hell. In fact, one of the sad things, John, is that I lost one a few weeks ago. They do. They become your family. And I'm gonna take you, I'm gonna take you and show you some of my family people upstairs.
People don't realize this. He is the best shot maker I've ever seen. I'm not talking about percentage-wise, but he would shoot. Sometimes you go to a college game and they have a kid shoot from half court, and they said, if you make this, we're going to pay your tuition and everything. Well, Vieira used to shoot from half court. Jesus. He used to actually shoot the ball, a 2-handed headshot from half court. And it was unbelievable. And he had a hook shot. He would drive into the corner off the wrong leg, bank it off the board. I mean, I've never seen a person shoot like this. As a freshman, he was a referee, a tremendous referee. I used to go to some of the high school games with him. And one night, we're going to Naugatuck. I'll never forget it. They're playing Aunt Sonia. And as we're driving in the car, he tells me about this dream he has every night. And I said, well, what is it? He said, well, I'm in a deep sleep, he says. And I wake up and I say, who is the greatest shooter to ever live? And then there's a pause, and he says, thank you very much. And he goes back to sleep.
The key, John, I'll tell you right now, you're going to see in a little while, I receive a lot of awards, many awards, but nothing takes the place of the awards you receive as a player. And back as a kid, and then up until, I would say up until 61, my 40s to 61, 61, that's when I got the college job. And then I was not allowed to play anymore, so. But those years playing, had my own team, traveled, had ball, will travel. It was just fantastic. I was never awed. Everybody made such a big deal out of me outscoring Chamberlain. They made such a big deal out of me scoring 55 points against the Harlem Magicians, who were the original Globetrotters. I just had that cocky feeling, but not really. It was the best time of my life. And then coaching, I threw that in.
Oh, he's a hell of a coach. Yeah, he was a competitor, and he was. That was good. It was great. That was a great run. He's played for how many years? He did a hell of a job, and to play him was tough to do. He was a hell of a competitor. Yeah. Whenever we faced him, it was hell. The kid did a great job, and he was good.
Bobby Knight from Hartford. Well, I must have seen him at least 15 times, because every different team, they would bring in Bobby Knight to try to guard me. So Bobby Knight, to me.
No, when you say try, what does that mean?
That means it was impossible. Okay.
Why was it so hard to guard you?
Because I was so quick. Number one, and I had 3 shots. I had a set shot, I had a jump shot. And John, I had a running hook shot that I could throw 21 feet out. There's a photo over there. But, and all those guys from Hartford, they knew it, you know, but he was getting paid so much to try to come in and guard me. So it was just Bobby Knight, I thought, the best ball handler, you know, in our time, you know, and a wonderful, wonderful person. But it was a game. I would see him so much during the year, but that's the way it was. I had this attitude. No matter how much I drill them, no matter how much I push them, they're never going to be pushed as much as I push myself. So, you know, I had a set of rules, you know, that I lived by, and it was easy. And see, the one thing is, my rules, a dress code. I hear, if you didn't go by it, no problem. I'll see you later. You know, and your locker was clear. My philosophy was treat the number one guy like you treat the last guy on the team.
He's just a guy that you respect. And I always say I played for Zimmer. I played for all these guys, great coaches. My junior college coach was great, this and that. But no one liked Vieira. He just had that way about him. You just wanted to learn. Anything he said, you listened. It wasn't like you just, you know, shoved it off and you went in one ear and out the other. You listened, and if you didn't, he wasn't going to play. He knew. He was a psychology major. And that was the other thing, John. You know, he was a psychology major, and he just knew what he was talking about. And you knew that he knew what he was talking about, so you listened. And you wanted to learn, and you knew that he had the connections to get you to the next level. And I didn't want to relinquish that at all.
I always tell people that my claim to fame is that I worked 14 years with Porky Vieira and still appear to be fairly normal. But he's one of the most forget that. He is tenacious. He was that way as a player, and that way as a coach. He's probably the fiercest competitor that I've ever seen, and it's kind of contagious. And he's a tremendous reader of people. He's got great instinct, and he's a outstanding motivator as a coach. He could certainly get the most out of all of the players, and he had that knack of knowing the right buttons to push.
Certainly, on the baseball standpoint, Porky is known for his fiery personality on the baseball diamond. But you can translate that certainly to what he must have been like on the basketball court at 5'5". And on one occasion in the Catskills, he went against Will Chamberlain, and as Porky would tell you, he outscored Will Chamberlain, and it may have been 37-33. And on the occasion that I mentioned that to Porky, he said no, it was 38-33. His accomplishments on the basketball floor may have been overlooked by many as generations moved on by the phenomenal success that he had at the University of New Haven for his baseball.
He helped my brothers a lot. They both pitched for Yale, and I think he had them, or maybe he was a rival of them. I know he was at New Haven when they played that city series.
Right.
They were both pitchers, and they played in the West Haven Twilight League, and he helped them, even though they were on opposing teams. They're both pitchers, Frank and Charlie, and Porky really went out of his way to help them. Probably more than their Yale coach did.
Just assume, you know, because I assume because the type of kid, I coached a kid, when I went out to recruit a kid, I looked at his talent, of course, but I also looked inside, saying, can this kid handle me? That was the key. And so I had a lot of them. We had 72 signed. We had 14 make the majors, so something had to happen. So fortunate. The greatest role model, the greatest male that I've ever met, and I met Ted Williams, I met, I was in front of, met Joe DiMaggio, and the greatest male I ever met was my father. He was the epitome of what I think a male should be. Religious, kind, giving, hard-nosed, everything. And so I was ahead of the game because of him. Pride, he looked out there and you see those people in line during the Depression. He says, you're never going to be out there. We're going to work hard, so you're not. He just had anything that we ever did. If he sent me out to help a plumber, don't you come home unless you did the best job you could. He was it. My dad was it.
When I think of Porky Vieira, I think of Bridgeport's own. He was known for Bridgeport, but also when I was coming up, he was so supportive of me because he was official. He would officiate games, and I knew who he was, but I didn't know how great he was prior to my playing. But he always came up to me and said, "Hey, young man, you did a great job. Keep doing what you're doing." And I thought it was that kind of special because when you're popular yourself, you have a little ego. Porky shared that ego with me and said, "Keep doing what you're doing, Walt. You're a great wallpaper. You got a future ahead of you." So I think Porky was like a coach, which he was a coach. He was encouraging, and for me personally, he always had great things to say to me, and I thought that was a plus for me.
I had the honor of playing against Coach Vieira's teams. I had the honor of coaching against Porky when I was the associate head coach at Quinnipiac for a year. And then I got to umpire a lot of his games. I could tell you as a player, a coach, and an umpire, everybody had the highest respect for Frank Vieira. After one of the first games I worked for Coach V, he came up and said, "Would you mind if I talk to you?" And I said, "Absolutely not." He said, "Raph, you're 5'7", you're 5'8". You need to make yourself bigger behind home plate. When you come up with the strike call, you got to get your arm up. You can't be down in a crouch." And to this day, and I'm still umpiring, my out call is up here, so everybody in the park sees it. Thank you, Coach.
Right now, I'm looking back now, it's because how many people I touched. That's number one. Number two, fortunate to have my wife, Laura.
We just were like glue. It just happened, and people always ask how we met. It was. I could tell you how we met, but it was just not going to end. And they tried to separate us, the age, the whole thing, but we were inseparable. And it's been just fun and a lot of love, and it's been a great time. And he's a wonderful person, and I don't have to tell anyone that because they all come back to see him.
But in general, I think the thing that really, I received so much, and I think my whole philosophy is to give. And what's happened to me now, John, I have a lot of my ex-ball players coming back and visiting with me and telling me that as tough as I was on them, it was good for them. They went to the next level in whatever they did. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud. I've had a great life. And, I'm looking to still continue to give.